Test 1, 2. How's that up there? Good to the internet? Yes. Good. Okay in the hall? Yeah? Okay. Check 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 1, 2. Good. We are rich in flowers. Look at this. Whew. Thank you, thank you, thank you. How about one up by the Buddha? Want to put one up here? Nice. Well, hi. How nice of you all to come to the party. Even though it should be raining if things were as they once were, I sure like the sun. Hello, come on in. How many people here today for the first time? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 or so. Great. Well, I have a wish I'd like to offer those of you that are here for the first time, which is that I hope being here today utterly transforms your life. Just a small wish. I hope you find meaning and a path, and if you don't, and if this isn't the right place, then keep looking, because because there is such a thing for you. And we humans have created many different vehicles for waking up and becoming more loving. Different cultures have produced different approaches, and some of us need different things. And there are representatives of every significant spiritual tradition on the planet here in Portland. And so I encourage you to find the right place if this isn't it. Hello to those of you out on the internet. I forgot for a moment. How nice. You look so small up there. You look like a camera. It's hard to see you in it, but in my mind I see images of some of you that are commonly watching, so hi. Strange, isn't it, how we do this? Maybe it's what psychic powers are really about. So I want to begin today with a little reading from Matt Flickstein, the first part of a letter. This will be the beginning of my Dharma talk as well. Everything that arises disappears. Whatever is born dies. Nothing escapes this cycle of birth and death. It is important for us to directly and experientially realize that there is never a point in time when something, in quotes, exists and is not in the process of becoming something other than it was just a moment before. All suffering comes from clinging, trying to hold on to that which is perpetually changing, and all clinging comes from delusion. That's quite a sentence. All suffering comes from clinging, trying to hold on to that which is perpetually changing, and all clinging comes from delusion. We must learn to live in the clarity and space of non-clinging, neither grasping nor pushing anything away. The key is just to be present with what arises from moment to moment, without holding or resisting. At the same time, it is essential not to fall into the trap of denying the relative existence of our psychophysical organism and the world of experience it presents. It's a lot in one little paragraph, isn't it? So we'll unpack that and put a few more pieces into it too. So please join me in the modern translation of the ancient practice of taking refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. I take refuge in the Buddha, the one who shows me the way in this life. Namo Buddhaya, Namo Buddhaya, Namo Buddhaya. Dharma, I take refuge in the Dharma, the way of understanding and love. Namo Dharmaya, Namo Dharmaya, Namo Dharmaya. Sangha, I take refuge in the Sangha, the way community, mindful harmony. Namo Sanghaya, Namo Sanghaya, Namo Sanghaya. Once more, I take refuge in the Buddha, who shows me the way in this life. Namo Buddhaya, Namo Buddhaya, Namo Buddhaya. I take refuge in the Dharma, the way of understanding and love. Namo Dharmaya, Namo Dharmaya, Namo Dharmaya. I take refuge in Sangha, the community of mindful harmony. Namo Sangaya, Namo Sangaya, Namo Sangaya. I've been learning this fancy new picking thing. And interestingly enough, when the mind wanders, one loses what one is doing completely. This thing, very funny. Gosh, I didn't do it perfectly. Experience 10,977. Okay. Maybe just a moment about perfection. A perfect moment for this. From the great mystical saint of the 20th century, Mr. Rogers. I know how important it is to give up our expectations of perfection in any area of our lives. I know I've tried hard to do this, and yet I know that every once in a while the old pattern emerges. Quote, maybe if I could make just one proper segment of the program, and I find myself in the trap again. That doesn't mean that we can't produce highly satisfying moments for ourselves and others, but it is important to give up, perhaps daily, trying to be perfect. Of course, I think we want to do it so strongly because we reason that if we are perfect, if we do a perfect job, we will be perfectly lovable. What a heavy burden. Thank God we don't have to earn every little bit of love that comes our way. Close quotes. Try to be perfect. Tiresome. Exhausting. So, let's practice an imperfect meditation this morning. Let's allow ourselves to be who we are, allow the mind to be what it is, how it is, and be as awake as we can. So I invite you, please notice that your body is touching the chair. Not a theory of this, not an idea of this or an image of this, but of actual contact. Notice the life in your hands. Awareness and life come together. And if your eyes are closed, notice an absence of seeing. If they're open, notice seeing. How else does awareness know life in this moment? Where else is there sensation, warmth, coolness, tingling, vibrating? Painful sensations, pleasant sensations. one thing that's happening for sure is breathing in and breathing out. And I'm certain of that because if it weren't, you'd fall over. And this breathing in and breathing out is ancient with us. It is part of our intimate connection with the world. The same way food is and water is. And so paying attention to this breathing in and breathing out provides a very functional home base. Because the breathing happens only in the present. It only happens now, and there's only one now. So anytime awareness and breath are together, we're here now. And it would be very easy to become perfectionistic here and say, well, I have to be successful at least 95% of the time being with the breath. And so begins the war, the battle, the struggle. Much more skillful to say, whenever I can, I'm going to come back to the breath. And then you'll notice that the mind wanders off. Sometimes it's gone for a long time, but then awareness comes on and notices it. It's this waking up which the Buddha discovered to be the royal road to freedom. may discover that the mind wanders a lot, or maybe just a little. Maybe this is a moment of easy presence with the breath. Or maybe it's a moment of profound emotion, in which case, put aside the breath and feel your way deeply into that emotion. Over the millennia, people have developed many different strategies to help stay with the breath. One is to count breaths, breathing in 1, out 2, up to 10, start over. Another is to use the cognitive function of the mind to note chest and abdomen, rising, rising, falling, falling. Mind wandering, returning. If the mind is worrying, noticing worrying. If it's content, noticing content. These are all supports for the mystery that awareness exists. And the body, while it is temporary, exists. And the two of them can come together with a remarkable ease and beauty. If the mind is somewhat at ease, you might discover that you can feel the entire body at one moment. It's as though awareness opens to the entire field of the body. And within that context, the field of life, there's breathing. We don't often sit still like this. So one thing that happens is we may well become aware of discomforts in the body which were previously unknown. What should we do with discomfort? We usually move away. This is one of the things that keeps us restless and agitated and consuming and kind of driven in our lives to avoid discomfort. So we learn in meditation to bear that which was unbearable. Not for masochistic reasons, but in order to suffer less. In order to come to terms with the fact that discomfort and disappointment and dissolution and things not going as we want them is quite normal in life. So we learn in this little experiment of sitting still in discomfort, we learn to be happy and content in the fire of the world, in the difficulty of life. So if and when discomfort arises, you could simply notice it and stay with your breath, or you could consciously put aside the breath and then abide knowingly in the discomfort. See what it really feels like. See what the mind is saying about it. We might try a little experiment. If you're experiencing discomfort right now, and perhaps changing position or a very mindful few moments of stretching might help, why don't you let that happen? Notice the movement. Notice why and how, and stretch. Adjust your posture. Moving as mindfully as you would sit still mindfully. And then settling back into sitting again. If your meditation practice doesn't become comforting and easing for you, you'll never do it. Or you won't do it for very long. Our environment is pretty quiet today. Not much traffic, few dogs. Those of you at home might be experiencing ambient sounds. If that's the case, sounds don't have to be a distraction or a disturbance. Certainly not a disturbance. Sounds simply come into being like this voice and then disappear. They manifest and teach the great truth of impermanence as clearly as, or perhaps more than, the other sense doors. There is something miraculous and extraordinary happening. No matter what's going on in that mind, whether it's calm or busy, content or irritable, awareness is taking in the show. Awareness is to us as water is to fish. Hard to know it because it's so all-encompassing. This awareness is what we mean when we say, I take refuge in the Buddha, in being awake. It's this that knows. Please notice the quality of mind which is present. Is it a mind that's calm and concentrated and at ease? Or restless? Is it content or is it wanting something? Or is it wanting something not? Is it wanting something to be different? Is it comfortably simply awake or is it falling asleep? Is it radiant with faith and certainty that what you're doing is good for you, wise? Or is it perhaps doubting? Is it spacious with love and acceptance and compassion? Or is it caught up in some emotion, self-hatred, self-pity, irritation? This is the mind. We have all these states. They're like weather, so we learn to treat them like weather, which is to neither attach to them or resist them, just to notice, this is what the weather is right now. Please notice the shape of your body right now. This is the sitting posture. In just a few moments, I'm going to ask you or invite you to let your eyes open. But before you do that, please notice the planning that has to be done, the intention. The eyelids don't rise by themselves. They rise because of intention, effort. So when it's ready, when the decision makes itself, notice how it is to allow the eyelids to peel up or to slide up, and then watch how objects appear. Objects, seeing, seeing. Seeing. What a nice enablement that is, to be able to see. And then we could let our eyes close for a second or two and notice how temporary seeing is. It's very conditional. Light, visual objects, an intact eye. Consciousness, seeing. And next, I'm going to invite you to move from sitting to standing. But notice, before you move, what moves first? How do you get there? And then let's very mindfully, as though you're moving, I like this image, in thick honey. I suppose you have some kind of special breathing apparatus to breathe honey. But notice how it is to move aware of every little tiny movement. Those of you here for the first time probably wouldn't know, my teacher for almost 45 years was a woman named Ruth Denison. Her picture is up here. She was a pioneer, one of the very first Westerners to train in Asia and then bring the Dharma back here. And she was kind of radical in that she taught women, it's kind of a bold move, she taught women, but then she also taught movement. She and her husband Henry lived in Hollywood, and there's a whole story with that, but their home was a passing through point for the spiritual intelligentsia, Alan Watts and the gang. In fact, that circular tabletop Ruth made, and when she gave it to me, she said, "Darling, I'd want you to know that around this table sat Alan Watts, Aldous Huxley, blah, 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 and they were all tripping on acid, and I was their mama." So she introduced movement, and it was revolutionary. She was actually scorned. Of course, it's turned out that movement's pretty important in our lives, and so we can do it very mindfully. So one of the things she liked to do is this, simply, I'm going to move, please mirror these motions. And if you get lost, so what? Start again. Home in your body, feeling your feet touching the floor and the hands turning like this. Let your palms face out and then to the back. Where are the sensations as you do this? This is life. And if you'd like, you can make the rotation such that it stretches a little bit somewhere. I like to, as I do this, really drop into the body, and it doesn't work in follow the leader like this, but I like to close my eyes when I'm doing it by myself. And now let's let the right hand alone cross over the front and then down. And then the left. And now stretching it out to the side and then up high. And watch how the weight shifts from one foot to the other. Really present in each motion. And as we do it, we'll discover that there's fatigue building up. And so we don't stop immediately, but examine what's it like for fatigue to build up. It's how the body tells us it's had enough. But we've learned that it's useful to learn to bear some fatigue. Strengthen the muscles. And now letting the arms come out to the side like this. And let them be great wings. They come all the way up. Breathing in and all the way down. And then let the hands kind of curl inside each other in the middle up to the heart. Breathing out on the way down. I guess it's nice to let the knees bend a little bit on the way down. And then straightening on the way up. Present in the body. There's no way to do this wrong, so we can focus on the actual experience. And one last time, way down. and then way up. And then just standing. Standing and knowing it. And see how it is to let your body begin to sway. Let the weight come into one foot and then the other. Maybe let it twist a little bit on one side or the other or both. How is it for the weight to shift? How do you do this? How does it happen that this body moves in space like this? How present can you be in it? Oh, man. And let your arms twist around your body a little bit as you go from one side to the other. Twisting and twisting, and let them rise a little bit and then let them wrap all the way around as best they can. Let your head turn all the way. Very present. What would happen if you imagined that there was an invisible little string from the crown of your head pulling you upwards, so we're not slouched over, we're actually tall and twisting. And now letting this slowly wind down. Standing. Standing present. There's a lot of ideas about meditation. That it's about the altered states that sometimes happen, and altered, really remarkable, extraordinary, ecstatic, and awful and horrible altered states happen in meditation. They do. But is that why we're doing it? No. We're really practicing in order to live our lives fully, to actually get to the place where we can love ourselves and each other and take part in community. Participate in life. So to be here is the trick. Ruth Denison she was a beautiful young German woman when the Russians came, about 21, and she was captured and treated very badly. She was raped more times than she could count. And that injury resulted in, there was a weakness that she had, that she one time, she was at the beach with her husband Henry, and she learned how to project her body, her consciousness out into the waves, and it was very wonderful. But then one time she couldn't get back in. And so for a year, she suffered what's called depersonalization, derealization disorder. She finally did get back in. She was with Yasutani Roshi, and he took her around the world to all these great, Western medicine couldn't help, except to drug her. So he took her around the world, and with Yasutani Roshi, he said, just relax, relax. And she said, if I relax, I'll die. And he screamed at her, then die! And she snapped back in. A year. So when people talked about doing out-of-body experiences, she wasn't thrilled. One fellow on one retreat said, I was just out of my body. And she says, out of body. Can you stay in your body for 5 seconds? So she had a particular axe to grind on that. But to be here to be in this body. And let's begin with our right hand and let it kind of wiggle like this. The air piano, fancy air piano. And then let the wrist get involved. And then the forearm and the elbow and the shoulder. And then let this arm kind of go nuts. But very mindfully. It's mindful, nutty arm. And then let it suddenly stop. And then let the other one pick it up. And air piano, and then twisting and bending, and then shaking. Remember that Raffi song? Shake, 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 shake your sillies out. So that's the left arm, and then let's let it stop. And then the head. And the shoulders. And the arms. And then the torso. And then the hips. And the pelvis. The forbidden front and back motion. And then the right leg. It's hard to remember. Shaking the arms, the head, the right leg. And then the left leg. And both legs. Oh, let's hop. Let's jump. There we go. Shaking and hopping. And a little sound. And stop. Look like the Rajneesh ashram for a few seconds there. A little stronger breathing. Present, awake, alive, mindful. All right. Standing. Breathing in, breathing out. And please just take a moment to turn to the degree that it's comfortable and make eye contact to the people that you come past. Just turn and notice. And if you'd like, you could think a thought like, oh, I hope you're happy today. Or may you be healthy and make it through this flu season without getting the damn thing. Or whatever your best wish would be, just turn around, make a few moments of. Or if you're just looking at someone and they don't notice you, you can still bless them and wish them well. Community. We're in this together. So from here, Jim Dalton had a power problem at his home tonight, this morning. He was taking Jody out for breakfast, so that's why he's not here doing the movement. In a few moments, I'm going to ask you to sit, and then Avi will do announcements, and then I have a fascinating Dharma talk prepared for you. How long do you think you'll be?
5 minutes. 5?
Yeah, I'm just thinking if I have time to do what I want to do.
You want to do what you want to do anyway?
Yeah. If I'm not back, just sing a song or something.
Good morning, Sangha. Is my sound okay? Is this okay? I got the double okay signs, so I'm good. Okay. My announcements are equally fascinating to Robert's Dharma talk. Maybe. We'll see. My name is Avi. One of my roles is community coordinator here at PIMC. I have a bunch of announcements. We have a bunch of things coming up. So starting closest and going furthest out, is there anybody who's doing Dharma consults today? Anybody? I don't think so. Okay. So the gentleman in the back there with his hand raised, that's Gary. Dharma consults are a way of checking in about your practice briefly with somebody who knows about practice, or a quick on-ramp to starting a practice. If you've always wanted to start one, now is your chance. We've got 3 slots, 20 minutes each. After the Dharma talk is over, there's a sign-up sheet there in the back by the front door, or just go up and see Gary, and he would be happy to meet with you. We also provide Dharma consults anytime. If you were to contact me at my office, I can set you up with one of the members of our Teachers Council, and they could either meet with you in person or on the phone or by video chat if you wanted to check in about your practice or start a practice in a very no nonsense kind of way. So let me know. Then after the Dharma talk, this is our potluck weekend, so we have food there. Come and share food with us, get to know other people who are in the Sangha, and make friends. Then we have other things that are going on. So it is wonderful to see this hall filled with people, but there are people who have told me that they appreciate a smaller sit, something with like less people, more elbow room. We have those too. We have 4 sits during the week, tonight, on Sunday night, Tuesdays and Thursdays, which get in the range of about maybe 5 to about 15 people. Very comfortable, much smaller, lower energy. If that is your thing, check out the website, because we have those every week. Then in terms of events that we've got going on, Jim Dalton, who is not here today, is doing one of his half-day Qigong retreats. That'll be on Saturday the 20th from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. Details are on the website. If you like the movement stuff, but you like it in a more energetic, formal way, Jim is excellent. He's been teaching it for years. On Thursday the 25th, we've got the start of our 6-week Basics of Mindfulness class with Doug Pullen. Details on the website. If you are looking for an in-depth way of starting your practice, learning about in-depth what it means to have a mindfulness practice and the chance to practice it in a class structured situation, that is for you. That starts on the 25th in the evening. Then on Friday the 20th, hold on a minute. Okay. Then on Friday the 26th through Sunday the 28th, we've got a visiting teacher, Pablo Das, who is going to be doing some teachings about Buddhist heart practices and doing a day-long retreat about trauma and Buddhism. Details are on the website. And then on Wednesday the 31st, we start a 10-week skillful speech class, which is a basic introduction to nonviolent communication with Doyle. Details are on the website. And then finally, in terms of special events, we've got another visiting teacher, Kevin Griffin, who is going to be here Saturday, February 3rd and Sunday, February 4th. And we don't know what he's teaching because the details are still in flux, but that should be on the website within the next week. So, a couple of other things to keep in mind. First is that we are an open Buddhist nonprofit community. Anyone who walks in our door or expresses an interest is a member of this community. And because we don't charge dues, in order to keep the lights on and in order to keep providing programs to you, contributions are really helpful. We have a contribution bowl back there. Anything that you can spare would be appreciated to keep this place running. I'd also like you to know that we also run on volunteer energy too, which is somewhat an invisible form of money. It's not traded on the stock market, but it is no less valuable. And if you want to engage in this community in a deeper way that really takes your practice off the cushion and puts it into the real world where you are engaging with other practitioners and developing community with them, then volunteering here would be a great way to do that. And the way that you do that is you contact Kirsten, she of the raised hand, or if you can't find Kirsten or she's busy talking to somebody else, come and see me, and then I will funnel that information to Kirsten and she will help direct you to a place where your efforts would be appreciated and would be something that you would like to do. I am in the office Monday through Thursdays in the mornings. Call me, email me, come and visit me. And I will do whatever I can to connect you with this community in a way that feels good to you, whether it's sits or teachings, or if there is some personal help that you need, that where you need some community support, that's part of what community is too. So I hope you have a wonderful day and a wonderful Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday, and blessings to you all. Robert, are you here? Oh, Robert is back with the kids. Well, he said if he's not back, to sing a song. Well, not just me alone. This is a community effort. When did it just become about me? Does anybody have a song we could sing? Oh, okay. We were just about to try singing a song. Well, I don't have any ideas, but...
Oh, I do. In about 5 minutes, would you go get the rest of the printing off my printer? Yes. Thanks. Test 1, 2. I'm having such a hard time not coming over to touch your baby. I would ask, of course, but Jumper. Isn't that interesting how they just want to do that, don't they? I want to strengthen my legs so I can make your life hell. And make everything in the house impossible to deal with. I'm going to spend the afternoon with my grandson, who's 10 and a half months. It's chaos. It's just, he can now reach so much. They have quite a nice coffee table, but it's got a sharp edge. So they have these, what are they? They're for pipes. You cover pipes so they're freezing. The house is all covered in these things. All right. Where'd it go? Here we are. Matt. Thank you for coming today. Kind of a bumper crowd. Please be advised that the carpet for the choir loft is ordered. The installation, the fellow went on vacation, otherwise it would have been in today, and we're in the research phase with chairs, and so very soon there will be seating for about 20 people upstairs. Very soon, as soon as maybe within 2 weeks or 3 weeks. The choir loft. And those upstairs, of course, will have to be able to sing, because well, that's what happens in the choir loft. And yeah, that'll be nice. So I had the privilege of being at Brightonbush for 5 days, from last Friday to Wednesday, and who's here from Brightonbush? I would see at least 2 or 3 of you. 1, 2, more than that. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, great. We had a good time, didn't we? We had a good time. So anyway, I'm really fresh back from there, and as happens on those retreats, I used to get exhausted, now I get very refreshed and energized. And quite a privilege. So I want to read this Matt Flickstein quote again. I got a smile. Ooh, that was exciting. Do you know why? There's a hypothesis of why children smile at 6 to 8 weeks. The parents are just getting to the end of their rope. And, the baby's going to hurtle through a window or something, And then it goes. And the first sound it can articulate is ma. Oh, he said my name. The second sound they can articulate, pa, pa, ba. Oh, look, he knows my name. I'll keep him. Quite a journey. Okay, so from Matt Flixen, I'll read the whole thing because it's really quite a beautiful document, though we'll really only be dealing with the first part. So it's about 2 pages. I'll read it mindfully. As I read, I'm going to attempt to be conscious about reading. And as you hear, your task is to be conscious about sitting and hearing. So it's not simply entertainment, it's the practice of attending. Everything that arises disappears. Whatever is born dies. Nothing escapes the cycle of birth and death. It is important for us to directly and experientially realize that there is never a point in time when something, in quotes, exists and is not in the process of becoming something other than it was just a moment before. All suffering comes from clinging, trying to hold on to that which is perpetually changing, and all clinging comes from delusion. We must learn to live in the clarity and space of non-clinging, neither grasping nor pushing anything away. The key is to just be present with what arises moment to moment, with neither holding nor resisting. At the same time, it is essential not to fall into the trap of denying the relative existence of our psychophysical organism and the world of experience it presents. Compassion is the willingness to play in the field of dreams even though you are awake. Approach life with joy, enthusiasm, love, and an open heart. Take the light in the manifestations of life. It is all a play of consciousness, and it really is all play. If something appears serious or burdensome, even death, we are lost in delusion. The field of dreams is this world of the senses with all its myriad forms. Being awake is the direct knowing that there is no one who suffers, no one who is born, and no one who dies. It is the 5 aggregates that are born and die. Who we are has never been born and never dies. I think I'll pause there. There really are 2 great questions which have been asked by us humans for a long time. Yay, thank you, Avi. Great. Please do not worry a moment about those little beautiful sounds, okay? Actually, I have a practice that I do on airplanes. I shared this with the folks at Breitenbush. Whenever there's a person or a couple with a baby on a plane and the baby is screaming, I always go visit them. And they kind of cringe. You know, I get to them and it's like, what is this guy going to say? And I say something like, traveling with babies is really hard. I've done it. And their eustachian tube isn't developed enough to let the pressure off, and so they can really hurt. And you're doing a great job. And if the people around you are uptight, it's their problem. Because they were babies once too. And if they're not feeling compassion and the desire to help you, they're just unconscious. So I hope you have a nice flight, and I hope your baby does okay. You can just see them melt. It's one of those ways we can use speech in a kind, loving way. We can make a difference in such a circumstance. And if I say it loudly enough, the people around hear it too. And that's got its own effect. So I try not to be too shaming. And it's hard. Boy, it's hard traveling with babies. It's just hard. And it's hard being on a long flight with a crying baby in front of you. So what? Right? Compared to the hard that we can have, that we can experience, it's nothing. I had the day really off yesterday. I watched the movie Dunkirk. And Dunkirk's, I come from Canada, Dunkirk's a bigger story in Canada than it is here, because there were a lot of Canadians on that beach. And 440,000 men trapped on a beach with the German fighter planes and bombers coming in, and they got every boat, every yacht that they could from England, and they crossed the English Channel and picked these guys up and took them away. A very beautifully done film. But what it reminded me of, the possibilities for suffering are so vast, right? I mean, not just in war, but in everything is unstable. So the questions that were the same questions that people were asking at the time of the Buddha. What's going to happen to me when I die? And what causes things? How do things happen in life? How do I make sense of the fact that this is happening? And then kind of corollary of that is, how do I live happily or contentedly or acceptingly and lovingly in a world in which things are so remarkably unstable? Same question at the time of the Buddha. Of course, because it's the human condition. The earliest burial sites that we've found of our species have objects, flowers, and objects buried with the dead, thinking that perhaps they'll have these objects in the next world. So, it's one thing to do mindfulness for stress management, and that's most people who are practicing insight meditation are getting to it now through the medical world, because there's clinics all over the place, and lo and behold, it works like a charm. We're discovering that we're discovering truths and can prove them now with PET scans and statistical studies. We're discovering that people who meditate with some frequency get sick less, and that all kinds of syndromes diminish. It's so significant, actually, that the bean counters, the statistical people, have discovered that if you meditate, this is where the data is really solid. If you meditate for 45 minutes a day, 6 days a week, you will use 1/2 the healthcare dollars in the next year and a half that you would otherwise. Whew. That's big. That's big when you're trying to calculate how to keep an insurance company solvent. So, it works for stress management, works really well. It also works for psychological and emotional health, because if we spend time sitting, we come nose to nose with our psychological states. Who experienced anxiety sitting here this morning? Please raise your hand. How about a little depression? See, keep looking around. How about happiness? Joy? How about self-hatred? Any self-hatred common? Even a little one. How about doubt? Fear? Etc., 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 right? And this is probably a fairly healthy slice of the population. This is a slice of the population that can get around and do such a thing. So, by stopping and bearing with these psychological, emotional states, we learn to notice that they are, quote, not me, right? They're something to observe. We then also notice that that as we observe intention and impulse, it'll change our lives pretty radically, because when an incoming statement happens from another person and that sets off a hurt and then an angry response, the more we meditate, the more that the time kind of opens up and we see, oh, this is the response I'd like to do. This is my impulsive response. And this is the likely response to my response, and I think I'll not do that. So we start changing our moral and ethical behavior. We start changing how we are in the world. So and that's the psychological and emotional application, and that too is sweeping the Western world. Arnold Toynbee, British historian, middle of the last century, he actually got very depressed, and he came and he did some Buddhist practice somewhere in America, and he made a prediction that the great, if we last another 200 years, that the great event of the 20th century will not be the things we usually think of. It'll be the coming of Buddhism to the West. That Buddhism transforms every culture it comes into because of this mindfulness business. Because when we start observing our behavior, we start changing. We start acting differently. I'm so enjoying those little sounds. Thank you. And the jumping. Hi. So, then there's these other questions. What happens when I die? I'm a little more convinced that I will, having just turned 70. It's like, geez, that's a big number. What happens? What happened to my mother? What happened to Ruth Denison? We have a little bit of Ruth here. Of the leftovers. This is a Thai thing. I bought these in Thailand. Actually, I had someone purchase them in this case. But if you want, I invite you to come up to the altar and open it. And look inside. There's a piece of significant bone here, very porous. Calcium. Is this calcium somehow sacred and special? I mean, Ruth would be delighted. She'd be delighted to be here and that we're talking about her. But it's a leftover of a body which is, as sacred as this guitar pick. They matter. Now, what the meaning we imbue them with is important. But the fact is, the isness of Ruth Denison, the essence of her, that which mattered in the world, disappeared in the usual way. Gone. We then got to bathe her, and we carried her across the desert on a door for half a mile to the meditation hall, and then we had her body with us for from 3 in the morning till 8 at night, I guess. Yeah. I had arranged for 30 pounds of dry ice to come the day before, so we were able to keep her in the heat. But where did she go? Where did my dad go? We humans go to great lengths to communicate with the dead, and we have elaborate stories about where they go, where we go. And these are the stories of religion. And interestingly, the stories are quite different from one another. Buddhism has its story too about death and rebirth, and sometimes in places we Westerners tend to think of rebirth as a very yay, I won't be gone. Do you want to do this again? So there's that question. Big one. And then there's the question of what makes things happen. How is it that I'm in this context? I have a really bad diagnosis, or I was in a car wreck, or I was abandoned by a spouse, or I'm very successful right now. We tend to not so much ask the question, how does this happen, when things are going our way? That fellow that won the $350 million lottery in Florida, I think it is probably not wondering, gosh, how did this come to me? He said, there's probably a rationale of why he deserves that. I have a friend who works with the 1/2 of 1% folks who are deluded and unhappy about finances, and there's a whole theology sort of how I deserve this, how I've worked for this. It's very interesting how we do that. But the Buddha, as a young man, Siddhartha, had these questions, as did many other people in his time. It was a time of social upheaval, and people were trying to make sense of things. But the new science, which was astronomy, they were beginning to make sense of the heavens. And so there was astronomy, and there was shamanism, and there were, how do we make sense of? So when it comes down to the personal level, how do I make sense of this? And therefore, how do I live happily? How do I live with less and less fear? How do I live with an increasing capacity to love? The dominant characteristic, the dominant story of our time is consumerism. Right? If I get enough information, if we have 6 sense doors, eye, ear, nose, tongue, feeling, body, and mind, and if I just have enough pleasant experiences, I will be satisfied. And we sure go to great lengths, don't we, to try to do that. And then at some point, sometimes there's a great collapse of that, but there's also a nagging, doesn't seem to be working. Maybe I should try a higher dose. A bigger house. I think an 8,000 square foot house would be more satisfying. So, when that paradigm, when that story collapses underneath us, that's when we really start asking these questions again, freshly. And one place that we humans get answers is from books and from beliefs, religious beliefs, that this is the way it is. Because it says it in the book. And the book, our book, the only book that really matters, our book, because it's right and was directly written by the heavens, it says this, and I'm going to believe in this. And for some people that works pretty well, though there's a downside to, I think of it as blind belief like that, which is that we tend to then need to convert other people. Because if we can't convert them and they're sane, rational people, then it begins to undermine my security, because my security is based on a belief rather than experience. That actually helps me. I live a pretty sheltered life, but when I do find myself in those circumstances where someone is trying to convert me to some ideology or belief, to remember that the intensity of the attempt is always coming out of anxiety, and so I can be much more compassionate with the person. So, Siddhartha was not satisfied with the answers that he got from the philosophy of his time, the religion of his time. That the Brahminical tradition really believed that the way to happiness and safety in the next life was through rituals and sacrifice. And so to do particular rituals. I remember, one can be so superstitious. In the early days of my practice, I was so happy to find the Dharma. And then I spent some time in India. But I was so superstitious. Every time I sat down to meditate, I had a whole ritual I had to go through before I could just sit. I had to do particular chants and remind myself of particular things, because there was so much fear that if I don't do it just right, I guess that's that perfectionism thing again. If I don't do it just right, then it won't count. So Siddhartha went off on his quest, and he in short, he had grown up in the lap of luxury, and he discovered that satisfying the sense doors doesn't do it. And we all live in greater luxury than he had. Right? He was pretty well off, but the sound that comes out of my iPad through a decent set of headphones is better music than he ever heard. And so on. The foods, we can drive out in the car and say, which of the world's great cuisines shall we eat tonight? Right? Unheard of. So he tried that and it failed. It didn't. He realized that he wasn't happy, and so he wound up leaving. And then he went off and he practiced very high concentration states and got very, very concentrated. But then he always came down. And then he tried fasting. He almost fasted himself to death, thinking that if I just don't ever indulge the senses, then I'll be free of them. And then something happened to him under the Bodhi tree, great story, where he started accepting everything. That sound is also okay. He started accepting everything as it was. It's this. And he had some memories from childhood of what emerged with great ease when he did that. And then something happened to him. We say he woke up, he became awake. And then he taught for 40 some years. And what did he teach? That's the question, right? And he was very skilled in that he figured out how to support people, how to guide people, so they could have the same experience he had. And that's what this place is about. This is about sharing the path that leads to that experience. And along the way, every moment of accepting things as they are rather than resisting or attaching, every moment of that is the path. The Buddha said, the taste of this path in the first moment is the taste of freedom. The taste in the middle is freedom. The taste at the end is freedom. So freedom from the suffering that comes from clinging. I don't want this to be like this. I want this to last. Oh, it's gone. Now I'm going to suffer mightily. Some of you were here a few weeks ago. Our little Chihuahua rescue dog died. Died in Jennifer's arms, actually, at home 2 weeks ago or so. She's a veterinarian, and we had him home, and I got to have my hand on the syringe, and there he was, and he was very sick, had a brain tumor, and it was time. He was in great pain, but to watch him go from here he is, a living, sedated but living creature, into and yesterday I only thought of him once. He was little. He had to really get his energies up to jump in the back stair. And when we first got him, he couldn't do it. And then a year and a half ago, we nursed him back to health, and then he could do it. And it's when I opened that back door to let the other dogs in. I feel a little tightness in the throat. The other two come roaring in, and I was like, well, where's Chimmy? Oh, right, he's gone. So where did he go? That's the question. So the Buddha had this experience. He taught how to get there. And the first step of this Eightfold Path is having a worldview that actually fits the world. And that's his answer for these major questions, these two big questions. What happens when I die? Well, let me talk about that one. The understanding, there is a whole story in Buddhism about depending upon the consciousness at the moment of death, then another body is seized, and so on, until the person is awake and no longer clinging. And then at the moment of death, there's dissolution and non-return. There are a couple of places in the Pali Canon where the Buddha says to his senior disciples, since there is no self to begin with, what could possibly be reborn? So then there's this question we can start wondering, and people battle over it. In the Buddhist world, there's all kinds of struggle over this. And Stephen Batchelor was very helpful to me, a fine writer and explorer, that the place that I find to land is, I don't know. I don't know, and it doesn't matter. Because, and this is the second question, what about causality? What causes this circumstance to be like this? And as I understand it, what the Buddha taught was causality is infinitely complex. And there is no telling what causes what, except for, if I drop this, I don't want to drop that, but if I drop this, there's some things that are very predictable. And if you, on your way home today, if you get out on I-205 and drive north and go 120 miles an hour, the chances are you can provoke an encounter with a handsome young person with blue lights. We can, in fact, or here's another fun one. When you go home today, there's no doubt something you just haven't shared with your partner or a friend, some truth about them that you've been withholding. Just give it to them straight. I predict you can provoke a really crappy afternoon. So there are some things, simple things that we can predict. But why am I sick? Why is this terrible thing happening? Or why is this good thing happening? These are such major, I've a little caveat happening in here. There also is the level, there's the level of social policy. And heavy topic. The systematic racism at the foundation of our country, and the structures that are still in place to keep certain people down are real. And so we can't just say, oh, well, it's like that, it's karma, it's vipaka. We have to use our consciousness and to really examine these issues. And then to do what we can around policy and around transforming our own biases and so on. But there is that place where this is happening in my life. This thing that I really liked ended. Or my child is doing this, and it really is dangerous and bad, and I know where it leads, and I can't do anything. So, this is the teaching, the Buddha's teaching on karma, vipaka. And karma means intention, intentional action. And our intentional actions have consequences. And he spoke of the law of karma as the light of the world because it's through karma that we transform our lives. We can. One of the most important, weighty karmas is a moment of mindfulness. Generosity is really important, but mindfulness overshadows it completely because to be mindful, to be aware, to notice what's happening, there's all these degrees of freedom that occur. To be mindful of a mood means I'm not that mood. To be mindful of an intention to speak means I can modulate how I speak. Just a little aside here. We translate sati, satipatthana vipassana, sati as mindfulness. It could be better translated as heart mindfulness because there's a warmth in it. And it could perhaps be better translated as remembrance or recollection. That it's remembering to be aware, which we're vastly more capable of than we know because we're usually caught in some kind of a trance state, the liking, disliking, the personality. So, the operational hypothesis that I believe is what the Buddha taught goes like this. I'm in this circumstance. I can create ideas of how I'm here, but really, I have no idea. How shall I respond? To the best of my ability in this moment, as conscious as I am, and knowing as much as I know, how shall I act? What karmic seed shall I plant? Because that will ripen as vipaka. There's a common New Age misunderstanding that when someone has something bad happen, usually one is tempted to say, well, that's your karma. It's actually the wrong word. That's your vipaka. And that kind of crazy thinking is used to blame people for all kinds of suffering. Whenever I talk about this, I remember one particularly egregious example, a woman that I met on a retreat who had lost 3 husbands to death. One to cancer, one to a car wreck, and one in a float plane accident. And she was in her early 30s. And people had asked her, why do you keep choosing men who will die young? Why did you cause this to yourself? But these beliefs are popular. There's that little horrid little book called The Secret that is I actually have a funny story about The Secret. When it first came out, I saw it. And it came out about at the same time as What the Bleep Do We Know? That was another craziness. I was sitting in the Vancouver airport on my way to Hollyhock, where I've taught now for 25 years. And there was a whole display of these books. And it stuck out about 3 feet into the walkway. And there was a trash can about 15 feet away. And I was sitting drinking my tea thinking, would it be, I could spare some people tremendous suffering if I got rid of but I wasn't stealing. I was just putting them in the trash. But I decided that it was not wise to do that, and I didn't, but had an interesting moral and ethical debate about it. So, what if what if it's true? How I act conditions the future, like tomorrow, today. Then when I sit in meditation and restlessness, agitation, worry, or sloth and torpor, or doubt, or fear, they're up. And what if I act like this? Oh, there's that. Back to the breath. There's that. Back to the... Here's this impulse to do this. Well, is that impulse a skillful impulse? Or no, I don't think. I restrain that. Oh, that's here. Oh, here's an impulse towards generosity. I think I'll do that. Here's an impulse toward loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, equanimity, mental states. Here's an opportunity to simply be with someone who's in a state, and I'm going to just be present without response. I'm going to just be compassionate. Then I become more compassionate. We become that which we practice. And so over time, we become what we long to become, which is more and more awake, more and more patient, compassionate, loving. And thus in Carl Jung's terms, we move from a fate into a destiny. We start creating a destiny which is one of being a much more loving person, a much more compassionate, kind, happy. What if I encounter a circumstance which is not going the way that I want? It's out of control. And I remember Matt Flickstein's first paragraph here, and I realize, oh, this is out of control because things are. Or something bad happens, and I realize maybe something really bad happens. And I remember, of course, something really bad is going to happen. In our lives, there will be lots of really big disappointments. And in the end, we say goodbye to everybody and everything, no matter what. And there's no way around it. We can't bargain our way out of it. We can't meditate our way out of it. We're going to despair. And they are too. So there's that. That's the first question. And then, is this true? Only way to find out is to try it. To see if in fact karma, vipaka is real. Can you transform yourself? And then this is a teaching from Ram Dass. If future lives are true, what shall I do in this life to create a good rebirth? Well, I shall be as loving and kind, and I should deal with what's on my plate as best I can. If this life is it, then why would I not do the same? Because that's how to create a loving, happy life. And that arises, one of the other argument, of course, and this was true at the time of the Buddha, people argued, there's only this life, therefore you should get everything you possibly can, have as much sensory experience as you can get, and forget about other people, because this is it. That's a very unhappy, lonely life, though, isn't it? Doesn't work. So what does work, opinion, strong opinion, is becoming more loving and more patient and more kind and more generous and more at ease. So then, with that, we have a way to live. And then we have this beautiful practice of mindfulness, which is so much more than just sitting here on the cushion. This is the tip of the iceberg. Because you guys are in the middle of this one. I always say this. There's the changing the baby meditation. There's the changing the baby in the middle of the night, when the baby's been sick for a few days, and maybe you're sick yourself, and you're exhausted. And you lovingly realize this little being needs me. And it was with my first child a long time ago, 36 years ago. I was up in the middle of the night. I had friends who were on a plane going to India to meditate for a month or so. They were going to go and become monks for a month or two. And I was thinking, oh, poor me, I've become a householder. I now have a baby. I can't really, my chances of enlightenment are really gone. And and there I was walking in the middle of the night, and I suddenly realized, wait, I have never been this tired in my life. And not only am I this tired, because on retreat I would say, well, I'm tired. I think I'll go rest and be prepared. But not only am I so tired, I have to attend to another being's needs. Because it was my son Luke, he said, without words, "Oh, Daddy, you have needs. Oh, and you're really tired? And you're really irritable and this you're because you're going to have to go to work tomorrow and talk to people and be exhausted, and you're worried about that? I don't care." Right? My needs come first. Now that's meditation. Right? That's observing the impulse. I'm me, I, me, mine, and oh, wait a minute. Whew. I will do this as kindly and lovingly as I can. And we discover we have depths of love we had no idea about. And then we're bigger. And then that same love for the other that we develop in so many ways, we bring it back to ourselves, and we discover we're more loving of ourselves too. So, karma vipaka, one question, which is, there is causality, but it's so infinitely complex. And however, I have profound influence. That's pretty weird, pretty amazing. People who meditate 5 minutes a day change their lives. 5 minutes a day. It's strange. People who meditate 20 minutes a day, within a month or two, somebody says to them, "What are you doing differently? You're just nicer to be around." And then sometimes when the impulse arises and a person takes to meditation and you find yourself meditating a lot, well, then life transforms radically. The relationship to life is really different. And the only way to do that, of course, is to make meditation become part of everything from driving to changing the diaper to chopping carrots. And then that question, what happens when I die, when we go really deep in the meditation and when the mind goes very quiet and the capacity to observe becomes incredibly articulate, then we discover what it is to be human. We discover what's way deep inside there, and what it's impossible to talk about very effectively, but everything's changing. It's a scintillating mass of phenomena, and we directly experience. There's no one watching it. It's just the universe. It's just awareness watching it. And then there's a freedom that comes in that. And then sometimes there's deep intuitive knowing that, oh, right. I just thought of Jack Kornfield's story. He went to see an old monk in Sri Lanka who was reputed to be happy all the time. And there was difficulty with translation, but he asked him, how can you be so happy all the time? And the fellow stopped and breathed quietly, and he said, "It breathes all by itself." So, the questions, what happens when I die? And how do things happen? And what influence do I have? Good questions, I think. They're fundamental to us. So, any question from you? KB. The 5 aggregates? No, the 5 aggregates are the body, feeling, the body in interaction with the world, feeling pleasant, unpleasant, indeterminate, perception, mental formations, and consciousness. Another Dharma talk. There is one on YouTube. I've done a talk on the 5 aggregates. There's about 200 talks on YouTube. And there's about 400 talks on the website in audio that I've given. And if you look around, look under, what's it called? The Bodhi leaf. There's so many Dharma talks. Dharma Seed. There's so many Dharma talks that you could go and watch a Dharma talk. Start today and watch continuously, and you could use up your whole life, which I don't recommend. So any other questions? Would you pass these out? There's one for each 2 people or so. Maybe a couple of people pass them out. I need one for me. Oh, one more. So any other question? Not all at once. Oh, hang on. Ready?
So, one of the things you brought up was the idea of reincarnation, and it seems like, at least in most of the teachings that I've listened to here, it hasn't really been an emphasis, which I'm thankful of, because to me, in my mind, the way I look at it, it is a story of permanence, in the tradition of, attempting to hang on. So I'm very curious about this debate you speak of and some of the things about that, and then specifically in this tradition, it sounds like you're taking an agnostic
It's true.
position.
If I had direct experience of past and future lives, I would talk about it. I've had remarkable experiences that look like previous lives. And I've had some premonitions about the future that were pretty remarkable, and then they came true. But does that mean that it's not convincing to me? And there are stories, if you can go by stories, there are children in Burma who have... at age 4, mommy and daddy are planting potatoes, and the child says, in the village I came from, we didn't cut our potatoes like this, we did this, and then they know the name of the village, and then they go to the village, and then, this house is different now, and the fence used to be here, and so that kind of stuff happens too, or so I read, but that's not my direct experience. Sogyal Rinpoche, some of you may have read his book, The Tibetan Book of Living and Dying. It's a modern restatement of the Tibetan Book of the Dead. That was published maybe 30 years ago. He came to town, and one of my friends interviewed him, and a Buddhist practitioner, and he asked him, perhaps rudely, Sogyal, this book is very clear about the Bardo Plains and all. Is this something you know to be true, or is this from the tradition? From the tradition. So I'm very much into empowering ourselves and resting in what do I know? And if it turns out to be true, if I have experiences that are convincing, I'll start talking about that. But I don't want to say anything I don't know. I do know that everything seems to be impermanent. And I do know that the sense doors don't seem to provide lasting satisfaction. And I'm pretty convinced from the deepest of my meditation that this self is a phantom. Also how moods change and and what a relief it is, the less attached to the demands of the self that, quote, I get, the easier life is. So that seems to work. Are the kids here? Great, let's have them come in, please. They are here? Great. So if you'll turn to your hymnal, come on in, gang. Oops. I just started taking guitar lessons with Steve Einhorn. See, I knew him. I saw him at he and his group were playing one night in a place in Milwaukee, doesn't matter where. And at the break, I went up and talked to him, and I said, I know you. And he said, yeah, I know you too. And we started, and it turned out that I taught him to meditate 30 years ago. So it's nice to come back full circle. Lovely man, great musicians. They're on tonight at O'Connor's in Multnomah Village, which I'm doing a family birthday, so I can't go. But anyway, he came up with this song for me. Oh, wait. It's a little low. Did I bring the capo? I may just have to reach low. Hang on. Anybody got a capo in your pocket? People have picks, I found out, when I'm without a pick. Oh, well, I just reach low with my voice. So this is a Pete Seeger song. It's a loving kindness song, right? It's about loving the world and having it go well. Well, may the world go, the world go, the world go. Well, may the world go when I'm far away. Well, may the skiers turn, the swimmers churn, the lovers burn. Peace may the generals learn when I'm far away. Sweet may the fiddles sound, the banjo play, the old hoedown. Dancers swinging round and round when I'm far away. Well, may the world go, the world go, the world go. Well, may the world go when I'm far away. Sweet, fresh may the breezes blow, clear may the streams flow, blue above and green below when I'm far away. Well, may the world go, the world go, the world go. Well, may the world go when I'm far away. One more time. Well, may the world go, the world go, the world go. Well, may the world go when I'm far away. Well, may the world go. So please, let's stand, make a big circle. There's a huge feast of food out there for after. Avi, did you talk about Richard Lang? All right, I will. On February the 17th, Saturday, Richard Lang is going to be here. He's coming from England to be with us. Richard Lang is the teacher of the Headless Way from Tanya Harding, what's his name? Tanya's husband is Doug Harding, Douglas Harding, The Headless Way. It's a marvelous addition to our practice here, and he was here last year and it was great. So there's it's on the website, and I'm going to send out some more. And it's the day, and then in the evening he teaches 5 rhythms dance, and so it's a part of the day is this dance in the evening. So I invite you to come on the 17th, I think it is, of February. And you talked about all the other good things. So, hand, please. May I hold your hand? Ah, yes. Thank you. Oh, I'll need the mic. Can you reach it? So, a wholesome karmic act. Holding hands. What about thinking a kind thought for the person on your left? We can so easily not bless each other, but why not bless someone? Wish them well. And I just realized I had intended today to start giving permission. If you don't want to hold hands, you don't have to hold hands. Just bump elbows or something. It's sometimes it's just too much, or sometimes we're not. We're not wanting contact, and so that's perfectly fine in this circle. So if you have a hand on your right, or just a person on your right that you're not holding hands with, wish them well. And what about that person between your hands? Not to forget her or him. What would be your deepest wish or blessing for this person? Be incredibly generous. And now, the ancient ritual, chanting the May All Beings Be Happy chant. Whenever you're ready.
May all beings be happy. May all beings be happy. May all beings be happy. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Thank you. You guys just did it. Just went in there. Good. All right. Now, we get to make a wish, and everyone in the room gets to take a deep breath in, and then all together we will blow at the candle. 1, 2, 3. Yes! Very nice. So please do come have some food, and may you practice well and make time for yourself. I would love, I would, so beautiful, beautiful, jeez. Hey, yeah, hang on, let me get this, go.
Got an important question for you.
Yes.